The Mannin Line, daily interaction, debate and exchange of ideas. Broadcast on Manx Radio from midday till 1, Monday to Friday.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Open line today through till 1. So if there's something on your mind you want to talk about, then call 66 13 68. Text 166 177. WhatsApp 166 177. Or email studio@manxradio.com. Well, surprise, surprise, the Gatwick flight didn't go last night. Didn't come in. So we are where we are, and of course a few days ago the airport director Gary Cobb was on talking about what we can and can't do and how we approach the future with cancelled flights. And you just wonder, the people who were due to come in last night on the Gatwick flight, if they weren't Manx residents, what their view is of the Isle of Man in that you can't get to an international business centre. Maybe they blame EasyJet, maybe they blame Gatwick, maybe they blame the Isle of Man. But that's the situation. But Dick said, Andy, look, over 40 years, I've taken hundreds of flights and had flights cancelled in some of the darkest corners of the world. I've been left sleeping on the floor for days. But it happens. It's not necessarily the airline's fault, the airport's fault. It's not unique to the Isle of Man. And I said, Dick, I've even been stuck at Ronaldsway waiting for hours as there was a problem with refuelling. I think the gentleman's friend was lucky to get a seat on the boat the next morning. This is the guy who made his way, I think, from Bristol to Heysham to get on the boat. That's a miracle. Sometimes you have to wait for days, especially if it's TT, to get on the boat at the last minute. So flights being cancelled is a normal occurrence. I've been stuck in Africa with nobody who, after a cancelled flight, no phone, nobody who speaks English, but I survived, and there was no government help desk there. You just have to deal with it. You don't have to moan about it, says Dick. Thank you for that point of view. Good to hear from you. And a message in talking about the properties on the prom and the problems they're having with the state of the prom. Well, I just wonder whether you've had any guests in, whether anybody's actually talking about what state the promenade is in. Obviously, we've been living and breathing the prom now. I can't believe it's not a building site, but it's still there, so everything is working. Maybe you have guests and maybe they have comment about what the prom is like. And lots of messages in yesterday about the state of Douglas, the fact that it looks unkempt, unwashed, unbrushed up, and certainly the flower beds aren't what they were. Well, so what do we do? And Keith just said there are 36 properties at Riad Eilean in Peel, as viewed on the Isle of Man government map. The estate is the last on the left when leaving Peel on the Ramsey Coast Road. So what are they going to do when they knock everything down? And regarding geothermal boreholes, perhaps we need to get geothermal fired up on the Isle of Man. Are there people who currently have domestic geothermal? Anybody? If you can tell us about it. And quite a few people. I think Wendy dropped me a note in. Wendy, was it? From Ballasalla, just asking about geothermal. She said, I hear you talking about geothermal all the time. What's it all about? I'll let you know later on. One thing I do need to tell you is that this coming Sunday, the 4th of June, the statutory consultation process on plans for 3 large wind farms in the Irish Sea ends. So it's this coming Sunday, the 4th of June. The wind farms Morgan and Mona are being developed under a joint venture between BP and ENBW, which is a German company. A slightly smaller farms planned by Cobra and Flotation Energy. But this Sunday, the consultation process comes to an end.
The plans, of course, concern among commercial shipping companies and some environmentalists. Soon after the proposals were first mooted, Steam Packet Managing Director Brian Thompson warned that if the Mona and Morgan wind farms were developed in the areas proposed, there would be consequences.
Oh yeah, it'll affect us massively. We'll have to reroute our vessels to go around them or go through them, and it has potential for our supply lines, either adding extra time to the journey.
Addressing the consultation input to date, Burkhart Romhild, Project Director for ENBW, said they appreciated the constructive feedback from stakeholders. Taking this on board, he committed to further fine-tuning the project designs.
There we are. That's Simon Richardson with that information, and it is this coming Sunday, the last date for consultation on the Morgan, Mona and the other Cobra Flotation Energy one. You got any thoughts? Yesterday, a lot of talk about taxis on the Isle of Man and the problems at the airport, i.e. the lack of taxis and what it is. Keith said a Maloo plate taxi can't pick up in Douglas. Some taxis also work under a private hire basis with Douglas firms, which is allowed. I suppose everybody in the taxi industry and people associated with it know the ins and outs of it, but the poor old customer is just left there. And the fact that you're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea and the DOI and the airport and the taxi companies, it's just that, is it too much to expect to go to a taxi rank at the airport and find taxis there? Is that unreasonable? Question the money we spent on the terminal at Liverpool. This would have set up our own airline, says Texter 439. Well, this whole question of whether or not we should, just like Guernsey, they fund their own airline. Aurigny, which I think is Channel Island speak for Alderney. And I think the boss of Aurigny was on Mannin Line a couple of years ago, who was on and said one of the reasons for Aurigny, the whole airline, is that the sea between Alderney and Guernsey is extremely choppy and it's not always possible to get a boat across. So they started years ago, it's back in the 70s, I think Aurigny actually started, that's the reason that they have their own airline. It loses money, it costs money. They do run scheduled services to Gatwick and elsewhere, but they always know that it's theirs and they're in charge of it. So whether or not you think that we should be doing something like we've done with the Steam Packet, an arm's length company that's operated, that is ours, and it gains us certainty of operation. Any thoughts on that? Text, email, call and WhatsApp. David's with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Randy. Just quickly regarding assets that we own, that's us as the taxpayer, which is in the custody of the Isle of Man government, say PLC, and this corporation organisation, which they still haven't, they've been invited to come onto your station and tell the public, you know, what they're intending to do, what is their plans. I mean, they're using our money. Shouldn't we know what is actually going on? Because you look at Summerland, I'll run them off quickly, Summerland Park Road, 2 pubs now, the Quarter Bridge, the one near Park Road School, the old prison, the bus station site, and we've got private individuals looking for answers regarding till the back end, like the Newsom site and the Castletown Golf Links, you know, the hotel site down there. What are our planners doing? What is the chairman of the planning committee? Maybe you could ask David Ashford to come on. Because when I was planning chairman years ago, he used to look at different things and find out what was outstanding and why we're not pushing it forward, you know, to give people an answer as a simple yes or a no. I just
wonder whether or not any of these sites are up for sale, whether there are advertised prices. I mean, just for example, how much would it cost to buy the Summerland site? If I were a private individual who had that amount of money, you just wonder whether or not the government's got a list of prices as to how much people could buy these for. Because if these are in the target of the Manx Development Corporation, it'd be nice to know, you know, how much money they've got to spend, who's going to build it, and where the dividends go. Do the dividends go back to the Treasury?
I'm sure they do. One of the other things from that is really, wouldn't you think they put out a statement like half-year statement on how we performed, or, what's our plan, what's going on. I mean, the island's beautiful when you're going around now in the sunshine and stuff like that. The island, but you got these spots, and people say to you, well, what's that, or what's the Summerland site? What are we doing with that? We haven't got a plan for it, have we? What are we going to build there? Maybe we should ask our population what we want on those sites.
It will be interesting to know, and as you say, we get used to these wastelands amongst our, we drive around, and in the end, you never notice them. It's like having a hole in the settee, isn't it? In the end, you don't notice it. But other people do, and we've got some terrific buildings, some marvellous buildings. I mean, just the old Peveril Hotel, of course, has been done up, looks lovely. And at the back of it, you've got Middlemarch.
Yes.
Which has got the remnants of the wall of the old nobles' baths that you can see.
Yeah, and they got a police station behind there. I don't know whether that's open or not, or what's gone on there. And there's lots of places which actually the taxpayers are in control of, or should be in control of, and we expect our politicians to come up with answers to say, why is this site not getting developed? I think it was it the Minister for DEFA said in her particular constituency of East Douglas, or whatever it's called now, is there's 5 or 6 sites there.
Yeah, there are.
What's going on? The only one they've ever achieved, and is coming to an end, is not sheltered. It's on the corner there by Governor's Dip.
On the top of Victoria Road, yes,
Glenside.
Glenside, that's it, yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's been a long time coming.
Well, when I left, there was, I'm telling you, a gospel there was a full set of plans for that particular site, and it was disappointing. I think it took 3 years after I'd left to restart it. It was given. All the planning was there, and when we want to do things, why aren't we using this thing of, if we need something for the good of the nation, compulsory purchase it, get on with the job, let's have something that we'll enjoy.
Okay, I'll tell you, David Ashford's going to be on Mannin Line towards the end of June, so he'll be on, and we'll talk about, obviously he qualifies now as a very prominent backbencher, former minister, but obviously, as you say, he knows...
He's got the ticket, though.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, cheers, boy.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for being with us today. And if you've got any thoughts on that, and I'll just reiterate, I know it strays into the territory of bad manners, but I keep on replying. I keep on saying that anyone from Manx Development Corporation is perfectly welcome to come on Mannin Line just to give us the good news about what they do. Peter's with us now. Hi, Peter.
Oh, hello, it's Peter Murcott here. I just want, you talked about consultations a few moments ago. We've had 2 consultations which have, where the majority have expressed a view, and account has not been taken of them, in the sense that they're carrying on with something which they consulted about. It calls into question these consultations. They must have a certain degree of expense, and it's quite difficult to get the public to respond, but I can understand the public taking the view that in the future it's not much point in responding because they'll go ahead anyway. I cite 2 examples. This Sunday, the roads will be closed between 12:30 and 6:30. There was a consultation on this a year ago. Over 60% of the people were against it, and yet they're going ahead. Now, why on earth did they have a consultation if they were going to go ahead anyway? I wrote to the Chief Minister and I suggested that because the closure, I think, has to have the approval ultimately of the Council of Ministers, that this would be appropriate for the Council of Ministers to refuse the consultation. No such refusal apparently was taking place. I never got a reply, in fact, but no refusal was taken. And so we're going to have a number of people who wish to go to church on Sunday who are going to be unable to do so. They certainly won't be able to go to evening services because the roads won't open until 6:30, and that's far too late. And if they're on the TT course, they'll probably be hesitant about going on Sunday morning, because if they are on their way home and the road's closed, they will be diverted off the road to the nearest exit point, which may take them miles out of their way. I hope there are people listening here who've come for the TT so that they do know that the majority did not want the roads to be closed, because Sunday is a day for Christian worship. And maybe some of them, and there will be people on the island who are Christians themselves, and especially knowing that the majority objected to the Sunday road closures on Christian grounds, that they may well show their views as well by going to church instead of watching whatever's taking place on Sunday.
Would it be uncharitable to suggest that the government put that consultation out as window dressing?
I use what I call, and it's a kickback to the days of primitive Methodism. There was a great man who brought that into being, who was instrumental in it coming into being. His name was Hugh Bourne, and he had a rule, and I'm going back 2 centuries now. He called it the best construction rule, that where there is a doubt and where you could come to 2 different conclusions, you give the benefit of the doubt. So I would always give the benefit of the doubt to those who hold it. I just think that it's very regrettable, and this is my point, that they're not taking due notice of the consultations, because it's bad for democracy. They are elected people, and they ought to show by action their love for democracy and their commitment to democracy by taking notice of majority of views when they go back to the electorate to ask them what they think. We've had exactly the same problem with the assisted suicide bill, and I call it that deliberately because that's what it is. We had a consultation on that. The majority have said they don't want it. And so, lo and behold, I understand that a bill will be introduced before the end of this session, and that it will take account of the views, I suppose, of the people who were in favour of it. But wait a minute, the majority have said they don't want it. So again, why is their time being spent in drawing up a bill which the majority don't want? That's really my submission.
So, but let's get to the bottom of this, though, Peter.
Yeah.
Why do you think the consultations are put out, and as you say, people respond in numbers, and do you think they perceive it's the wrong answer, or the wrong type of people are expressing their opinions?
Well, it's a very dangerous thing when you talk about in a democracy about the wrong type of people. I mean, that is hardly I would have thought that would be hardly a democratic view. Who are these people who are the wrong type? I mean, do we want clones of current thinking that seems to want all kinds of things which actually go against the Christian gospel? Or do we recognize that we have a constitution, we have the national anthem of the Isle of Man, and I use the language that was used in 2003 when they unanimously agreed to it, which is the most Christian national anthem in the land, and yet we have a situation where those things which particularly and specifically relate to Christianity are not being promoted, and in actual fact are being disregarded. And so you've got, as I say, you've got the fact that the roads closed on Sunday. There is a reserve, I believe, power to close them the following Sunday. And you've got this assisted suicide bill, which strangely, they've at the same time, I just don't understand the government. They've got a strategy, which I wholly agree with, about the prevention of suicide, a suicide prevention strategy for people who may be psychologically troubled. And yet, how can you do 2 opposite things and promote 2 opposite things? You want to prevent suicide, but then you want to assist suicide. Now, I'm not clever enough to understand what the aim is of the current government. Those are so contradictory that they really would only fit in a book by Lewis Carroll, like Alice in Wonderland. They don't fit into anything that's logic.
Okay. All right, Peter, I always appreciate it. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
All right, it's 12:25. Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. No, just listen to David Quirk there and saying about the various plots that are owned by the government, which are numerous. I know they bandied around when somebody was wanting to come into the Summerland site, and they were quoting X number of millions to steady the rock face with the buildings up above before any work was done down below to protect the properties on the top of the cliff.
Yeah.
Which is understandable, but anybody coming into that site would understand that anyway. But the government put their own price on it, and this would make it frightening. It would turn people away from it. But you were saying about the old police station. As far as I'm aware, part of that is used as a canteen for the drivers on the buses. See them in and out of there all the time. But also, what is happening to that eyesore in Duke Street? The iron steelworks that's gone up and still there and quietly rusting away now. It's going to have to be retreated before anything can be done, any substantial work. Now, is that going to remain an eyesore for ever and a day? And
apparently so at the moment, Howard. Apparently, I don't know, apparently whichever developer it was had financial problems, and I don't know whether another developer bought them out or who owns it at the moment, but apparently it can stay like that until somebody does something with it.
Well, this is where, as I say, we have a government, and they're talking about untidy buildings, and they're talking about putting rates, increasing the rates, and this, that, and the other on property that people own. Well, this is a classic one. This is a recent building that's gone up, steelwork has gone up, and then just left. And that was... Well, it was part of the street. It might have not been the best of sites, but it was certainly a lot better than what we see today. And how long, as I say, the park area in the back there, that's supposed to be getting built on. And that other one there, the Quarter Bridge, you mentioned that was bought... Well, I think it was over 10 years ago by the government, who had plans to modify the Quarter Bridge roundabout. They were going to put in a single roundabout with a slip road just past the fire station and going across the river and coming out on the Newcastle Town Road. So when the roads are closed, you could come down through from past McDonald's, etc., hang a left and go on out through the Newcastle Town Road instead of just sticking with the nunnery. But that all fell through because of costs. And now, again, we're going to have another derelict building on the corner. They've bought the bowling green. I don't know how long that's going to stay open. They buy a lot of these properties and they just sit on their backsides and look at them. And all I think they're looking at is the value of the property going up. In other words, if they buy it for X number of thousands of pounds, by the time they come to sell it, they made a little profit by doing nothing.
Well, I think the bowling green, the pub actually closed a few months ago. I think they had a bit of a party on the last night, so they're not serving pints anymore there. But what on earth you do with... the thing is that Quarterbridge is an iconic building. It's an iconic old pub because it hasn't been open for years. But remember, opposite that, there's the old spa shop, the Nook.
Yeah,
of course,
used to be a cafe.
And of course, that's in private hands at the moment. But apparently, as far as I know, that there's a hassle over parking, and the owner can't move forward with that.
Well, I don't know whether that was a listed building. I remember there's a cafe on the left-hand side of that building, because when we were a lot younger, in my heyday, when I had motorbikes, used to go down there, down to the cafe on the Quarter Bridge. We'd all meet there and go to various parts of the island. And it was a brilliant little place. The lady that ran it, there was never any hassle. Then it became a sweet shop with Harry Humbleby. And, of course, it just closed down and became one of these suntan places that was never open properly. I know the chap that's got it. And there's nothing being done. It's sad because that should be a building that has a preservation order on it, because, as you rightly just said, it's a unique little building. The Nook Cafe, as it was called, the Quarter Bridge, that was unique, and it's going to fall into dereliction.
Well, they're just those little pieces of the Isle of Man that just appear to be crumbling and falling away. And before we know it, once they start going, and remember, it's the people who come to the Isle of Man that notice it. The Nook is seen by millions of people every year on TV coverage of the TT. So surely they should do something and, talk to the owner of the building and just do something with it at the moment, rather than it sitting there like a broken tooth.
Well, he is a local man, and I know where he lives, so it won't be no major job to go and have a word with him. The only time you see any work getting done is when they go and trim the grass, where it's been made into terraces, so people can pay to go and sit on and watch the bikes come down to the Quarter Bridge. Yeah. That seems to be the only work that's getting done. But the government are their own worst enemy in this, because they will knock places down. And I often wonder, do they pay rates? Do they pay business rates, or they turn these places into car parks? Temporary car parks, as they call them. Do they pay a business rate on it, because they are operating a business from the sites?
Okay, Howard, I appreciate your call.
Just before I go, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the day before, I said about the charge at the airport, £15. Yeah. For 16 hours. Well, I looked on the internet last night when it came up, and that in the not the premium park as they call it now, that's the one closest to the airport, but the one furthest away, it's £11.
Okay, all right.
Okay, take care.
Thanks for calling today. Enjoy the sunshine. Louise is on now. Hi, Louise.
Hi. I was just thinking about what the chap before said about the assisted suicide and suicide prevention.
Yes.
Well, he doesn't seem to understand there's a difference. Suicide prevention is more for adults and children who feel a bit sad, probably need someone to talk to, and say things like, oh, I'm going to jump off a cliff if I don't get help. Well, assisted suicide is for people who are not mentally challenged, for a start. That would never happen. They're for people who are in massive pain and can't cope anymore, or wheelchair-bound and can't cope. You could have arthritis, fibromyalgia. I'm in so much pain at the minute, I would happily write, when I get to a certain amount, yeah, please, I would like assisted suicide to come through, because I know I'm only going to get worse.
Oh, Louise, really?
Yeah, but that's what the other chappie doesn't seem to understand.
Well, Louise, it's his opinion, and it's not for me to pass an opinion. To be quite honest, I just find this subject so sensitive, and it's such an individual opinion that his opinion, as he mentioned, was about, the government's got a suicide prevention strategy on one side, but also will be facilitating people to end their lives. And that's his view, and obviously you have your view.
Yes, I understand that, but also you could write a letter, a living will type thing, that says, if I'm ever bedbound or stuck in a wheelchair and can't speak, then please euthanize me. There's ways around, and the suicide prevention is completely on a different level to assisted. That's all I wanted to say.
No, Louise, I appreciate it, and thanks for being so candid with us today. Thanks for calling.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Oh, look at that time. It's 26 minutes before 1. I mentioned David Ashwood's going to be on throughout in June, the latter part of June, actually. I'll just tell you, for the whole of June, we've got some specials planned. On the 13th of June, Tuesday the 13th, we're live with the students of Castle Rushen High School. On the 15th, Sarah Maltby, MHK, one of the representatives of the Manx Labour Party, and she's in the Treasury. Sarah Maltby's going to be on with the Social Security Director, the boss of Social Security, Victoria McLaughlin, and we'll be talking about benefits. Monday the 19th, well, this is going to be interesting because Tim Johnston, MHK, who is the Enterprise Minister, and also his Chief Officer, Mark Lewin, will be on Manx Radio. And Enterprise has got all sorts of functions. I mean, it's Finance Isle of Man, Visit Isle of Man, the old tourist department, Digital Isle of Man, Business Isle of Man, the process of actually getting people to come to the Isle of Man to set up businesses. They run the Central Registry, the Aircraft Registry, the Shipping Registry as well, Locate Isle of Man, they do work permits, economic development. Not only that, but the Post Office reports to the Enterprise Minister. So that's going to be interesting and illuminating with Tim Johnston, MHK, Monday 19th, and Mark Lewin, the Chief Officer and the Enterprise Minister. David Ashford's going to be on, and also right at the end of June, on Friday the 30th, the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, will be on Mannin Line. Just some of the stuff we got lined up throughout June. A note in, I'm sure that the men in sheds will be able to fix that raft, the one that's not working in Ramsey, thereby saving £7,000 for that new raft in Ramsey, the swimming raft. The men in sheds have so much talent, they made skiffs in the past, so I hope this will help. Thank you, Hilary, for that information. Another message in, and this is regarding possible prank callers, and I don't know whether this has affected you at all. This is a note in from Bruce, who said, I live in a one-bedroom flat in Haywood Court, sheltered housing complex. About 3 days ago, I had a couple, a man and a woman in their mid-30s, early 40s, turn up at my flat, completely unexpected, claiming to be from social services. I wasn't expecting them. I had no reason to get in touch with social services. One of the first questions they asked me was how many bedrooms I had, which was a bit strange as it's a one-bedroom flat, and they should have known that. They then started to look in every room in the flat. Nothing was taken. I was there all the time. They then told me they would send 3 people round to thoroughly clean my flat, and it wouldn't cost me anything, as social services would pay. This all seemed very strange, as I hadn't contacted social services and had no reason to. So I thought I'd tell you all about it. It seems very strange. Could it be a scam? Have you heard anything about this? Do you know anybody who's had a visit from a couple turning up at a flat, a sheltered housing flat perhaps, completely unannounced, saying they want to look around and organise cleaning? So I've not heard of that before, Bruce, but thank you for bringing that up. And if it's something that you've heard about, I would really like to know if that's actually happening. And a note in from Peter, lots of messages to get through, including this one. I'd like to raise my concerns regarding the posts in Parliament Square and the clear and present danger presented by the non-removal of the post. Hopefully a rider doesn't hit the barrier square on, get thrown over the barriers. Should this ever happen, the chances of hitting the now present posts is a very likely scenario created by somebody who feels the simple removal of these is too much effort as opposed to the critical evaluation of rider safety. I know rider safety is paramount, but why in this case has it been allowed? These are the posts in Parliament Square. Parliament Square was once a good place to watch the races. However, with the extended barriers and the fences so far back to the front door of the Central, it's now prohibitive to watch from this location that spectator numbers have dwindled. In just 2 years, you can now see very little. It wasn't broken, so why have they fixed it? Hopefully it's going to get remedied. After all, rider safety comes first, but without spectators, I think the TT is nothing. Thank you for that. Good to hear from you. And a note in from, let me see, this is Richard, who says, you were talking about Grotty Douglas. You should look nearer to home. Oh, I see. We were on Douglas Head last Saturday for a picnic lunch. So sad to see the statue of Sir William Hillary, part of our island history, but the walled flower bed around it is full of weeds and brambles. Appreciate it's rough weather-wise sometimes on Douglas Head, but there are plants that thrive in the wind and the sea air, so maybe they should sort that out. And Andy, I was walking through Douglas early morning one day last week after dropping my son off at the boat for a school trip, killing a couple of hours before work, and I walked past a sweeper several times with a water jet going up and down Strand Street, washing and cleaning. So there is someone who's washing and cleaning Strand Street. Just that when I looked on Tuesday, it didn't look much like it. The gates of the TT Fun Fair have officially opened. The TT, have you been to the TT Fun Fair? The co-organiser is Jan de Koning, who's happy to be back. But were they sorry about the hassle?
Oh, we were so disappointed because obviously we've had 3 years off because of COVID, and we were really looking forward to getting back. I mean, we've been coming here this is our 35th year we've been coming to the Isle of Man, notwithstanding the couple we've missed, and we look forward to it every year. So we're really pleased that we managed to get the issues resolved, and we're back. When we come, we bring a lot of people with us. They stay in hotels, some stay on site, some stay in hotels. We spend in the local economy, we eat in the local economy, we employ some sort of part-time labour that contributes. We put a large contribution into the steam packet, and we pay what we think is a considerable site rent for being on the promenade. That goes to the government. So yeah, we use the local services, we use the local refuse collections, we use the local fuel suppliers, and so yeah, we do our bit.
And are there any new and exciting rides?
This is the tallest mobile ride in the UK, the Booster Max, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's 55 metres high and it goes at tremendous speeds. It's here now and it's setting up on site, so it's just all we're waiting for is the final approvals from the Island HSE, and we're all good to go. Fair time's 12 o'clock till 10 daily. The first day we're going to open at 4, a soft start tomorrow the 1st. After that it's 12 till 10 every day. We're just keeping to 2 entrances this year, one at either end of the fair. That'll be manned by security. We'll have security on patrol and we'll be monitoring the numbers.
I tried to find the consultation paper, but I can't find it to make comments, says Kath. If you go to enbw bp.com, the consultation for the Morecambe and Morgan offshore wind farms is there. You do have to scroll right down. It will give you a click through to the project website, which if you want to go there is www.morecambeandmorgan.com, and you'll then get to the consultation bit there. So Morecambe and Morgan. Morecambe as in Eric, and Morgan, word, and Morgan.com. You can find that out. It's about time they brought in tests for older drivers, particularly those with walking difficulties, says Mary. I witnessed an old lady on 2 sticks getting people to help her with her shopping as she couldn't walk. She then got into a car and drove off. How could she brake suddenly if she can't walk? No way was it an adapted car, says Mary. You had a look. Too many of them saying they don't go far, so it's okay. Mary said it's not okay, and I'm sure the insurance would have something to say on the matter. By the way, Andy, Lucy in Ramsey said there was a taxi at the airport in the TV show Maryland, which was shot on the Isle of Man, was it? No, of course. Isle of Wight and Ireland. Set in the Isle of Man, but shot in the Isle of Wight and Ireland. Thank you, Lucy and Ramsey. I'm glad you were watching, by the way. Did you spot the only Manx thing on it was David Artus as the man who was repatriating the body. What's this government doing? They need to get the taxi business sorted and sit down with the taxi committee and the RTLC and get this sorted. 21 years is long enough for them to get on with the job. They're very well paid. Thank you, John L., for that information. Why does nobody here mention tidal power, says Richie. Even Alderney, which seems a bit more go-ahead and proactive than us in several ways, has set a project going. Recent advances make tidal power cheaper and far more practical these days. Andy on 667 says apparently Douglas Borough Council can't paint their own lampposts because they can't find a painter to do the job, but they have no problem having more town hall staff, all at the ratepayers' expense, says Andy for that opinion. Thank you, Andy. A mention also of when David Ashford comes in, will he be prompted in advance to provide his line-by-line rebuttal, says Andy. Well, I'll certainly ask Mr. Ashford about the Dr. Rosalind Ranson case. Obviously, I think whether or not he'll be able to speak on it, don't really know, but certainly something I'll bring up. Could somebody explain to me why state pensions are said to be tax-free, but it's not true, says Sue. They're not taxed at source, but they are counted as part of your income, so are, in fact, subject to tax. Shouldn't state pensions be exempt from being added to tax returns as income? And I think, says Gavin, we need to build an all-weather entertainment centre on the Derby Castle site. Of course, Derby Castle was there before it became Summerland. It was the old dance hall and theatre site. This is the sort of thing that we need, an all-weather entertainment centre. Thank you for that. And some more messages in to a consultation is not a referendum, says Sue on 768. Good point, but it is a consultation. I just wonder if so many people disagree with something in a consultation, does it not engender a kind of feeling of despair? If they do a consultation and something is overwhelmingly responded to and they appear to disregard it, perhaps sometimes without comment, where does that leave us? For once, says 399, I agree with Mr. Murcott. But he should also include all the residents who just want a day out on Sunday, can't go anywhere. Ramsey shops and businesses close next week, except for pubs and takeaways. So who has the power there? More and more don't want this. On the wrong side of history, the schools are closed next week, maybe 2 days when we can go out. But can we go out safely? I'm fed up of this petrol mania, says 399. Brave person in this environment. How does it help the economy, especially the fun fair? Do they pay taxes here? It's what we export or sell that helps the economies, yet the builders and the shops are closing. Just got back from a lovely holiday in Port Erin, a beautiful area, but let down by that derelict swimming pool, which is a terrible eyesore. Plus, of course, the Cosy Nook now closed and no sign of anything happening to the Cosy Nook. Well, they are reopening the Cosy Nook this summer. Shame, says Liz in Cumbria.
True Manx. That's the TT. World-class racing that could only happen here. And ShopRite's the Manx supermarket like no other. It's where the riders shop. Great value food and drink and the biggest choice of local produce anywhere. Plus all your favourite brands as well as the best of Sainsbury's. Whether you're camping or staying in style, you'll find everything you need to make this TT your best ever at ShopRite. Open 8 till 9 Monday to Saturday, 9 till 6 on Sunday.
Athol Garage in Ballasalla is more than a Nissan authorised repair centre. Their team of highly factory-trained and experienced technicians will service and repair any make and model with dedicated aftercare too. With Athol, you get a competitive fixed-price menu and a courtesy car if needed. Pity this driver didn't know that.
Oh, great! I told you to go to Athol!
Athol, a garage to swear by, not swear at. Book now at athol.im or call the A-Team, 820082.
Just Care Products for mobility solutions. At Just Care Products, we have a range of rise, recline and fireside chairs to try. These are British made and perfect for people with mobility issues. With finance available through our partner Conister, come take a seat at Just Care Products. Find us behind B&Q or for more information give us a call on 627 177.
Haldane Fisher in Ramsey and Haldane Fisher in Douglas are open from 7:30 to 4:30 Monday to Thursday during TT Week and only closed Senior Race Day and Saturday. For TT Race Week, we're operating a collection-only service.
On the 29th of May 1940, the Isle of Man steam packet vessel Mona's Queen 3 was sunk by an enemy mine while attempting a second evacuation of soldiers from Dunkirk. 83 years later, the story of the vessel and her crew is still remembered in Port St Mary, and on Perspective this week we find out why. Why was the heroic endeavour of so many Manxmen not suitably recognised at the time? What drove the steam packet crews to such incredible bravery? We have some of the answers on Perspective this Sunday at 12 noon on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan. This incredibly heroic but tragic story is certainly worth listening to.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mai, good afternoon. Thanks for joining Manx Radio this Friday lunchtime. Gorgeous weather and roads are closed, of course. There is practising on at the moment, scheduled to reopen at 4:30. There is a contingency for an evening session or later on 4:45 from Barrule Park, 5 o'clock the bungalow, 6 o'clock everywhere else, but that is only a contingency and we won't know whether that's needed. But for the moment, practising going on. Roads open no later than 4:30 this afternoon. Got a message in. Does anybody know who makes dioramas on the Isle of Man? Somebody's looking for someone to make a diorama, quite a big diorama. Who makes dioramas on the Isle of Man? We have many skilled people, so if you know, just drop me a note and I'll pass you along to that person. And a note in from 653 who just said, Andy, look, consultations are just that. They're consultations. They are a snapshot, sometimes a small snapshot of views. Just because one view is a majority doesn't mean it should be followed. The only way to do this is to have a referendum where everybody has a vote in this. Also, as far as I'm concerned, there is a difference between the assisted dying bill and the suicide prevention strategy. It says Texter 653, well, Peter is entitled to his opinion. That's what Mannin Line's about. It's an opinion programme. It's a public opinion programme. And you may disagree with someone's opinion, but it is their opinion. And there is, let's have a look, there is not a lot to talk about geothermal or pulse plasma drilling at GA Drilling Limited. Oh, there is a lot to talk about. This is the greenest, non-political, everlasting steam fuel to run excising Pulrose Power Station. More should be talked about. Oh, there is a lot of talk. Sorry, you put an extra word in there, TP, from Onken, about geothermal. I'll come to geothermal before the end of the show. Ian said, Andy, just a thought here. The government effectively owns the steam packet. Well, technically we do, don't we? So, which as we know is essential to island life, and the wind farms that are proposed in the Irish Sea, in the words of the steam packet, will have an effect on the steam packet's routes. So why we heard nothing from the government on what's happening here? I'm concerned that the Green Lobby, with its obsession with net zero, is influencing government thinking, which may well be a detriment to island life in the future. Yet we hear nothing about government thinking and planning regarding this matter, which will have a possibly massive effect on the Isle of Man, says Ian. Actually, I don't think we have heard the government's view of these wind farms out in... maybe they'll be consulted on it and ignored. You never know. Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Yeah, just a quick one. I think it was Louise who spoke before about the assisted dying bill.
Yes.
Aside from the fact that the Canadians have only deferred for 2 years what they're going to do, which is they will be offering euthanasia to the disabled and the mentally ill without a foreseeable death, but they've decided to defer it for 2 years, but it will come in, which does mean that when you start off with your primary legislation, the secondary one can be something that you don't envisage. So that might be a worry for anyone who's disabled, and the Disabled Society in Canada is up in arms about this. There's another point to all this. How can we take a responsible course of action if we don't know the level of one of the most important things to measure? Because at the moment, the blood tests that we all go for do not measure vitamin D, and that has been implicated in almost all autoimmune diseases and all symptoms of depression. So before we start going down the road of getting rid of people, would it not be an idea to sort of get blood tests for vitamin D levels because they reckon over 50% of people are severely deficient in it. And if that's implicated in all these diseases that people are complaining about and they want out of the world, why are we moving forward with all these things if we don't know the most important vitamin level in our bodies? Because people don't. The only time you ever get a vitamin D level is if you get a fracture and they do a DEXA scan and then they say, oh, you're deficient in vitamin D.
Where do you think the difference of opinion is, Julia? I'm interested to know this because, Canada's a fairly progressive legislative arena. Canadians, I've always found, are the most polite people in the world. They're gorgeous people. So, I mean, you presumably disagree with the Canadian approach to assisted dying, am I right?
Yeah. I've disagreed with quite a few things. The people are great,
but
a lot of them are not very happy with some of the decisions that the Canadian government have done. For example, taking away people's bank accounts when they don't like the idea of vaccination for truckers and things like that, where they weren't able to go across the border and keep their jobs. So they seem to be going rather draconian in a lot of directions at the moment, and I've got a lot of Canadian friends who are not happy at all at what's going on over there.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling today, Julia.
Thanks, Andy.
Oh, good to hear from you. I just want to get to this finally, and it's regarding, I was talking about geothermal. Fred Gray and Graham Fox-Hume, both from Port Erin, have been in touch. They've been on the show talking about geothermal energy. And for the uninitiated, they were talking about on offshore platforms, basically you drill down into the rock very, very deep and pump water down, and it comes back as steam, and you drive a turbine with it. On offshore platforms, the wellhead spacing is a few meters, although subsurface spacing of the wells can be measured in kilometers due to the use of deviated and extended reach drilling technologies. Now, using the same technology in an area roughly the size of 2 football pitches, we estimate that we could have 8 injection wells and 8 production wells, which would, using the United Downs numbers, these are the people who are doing it in Cornwall, generate 24 megawatts of electricity. Multiply the number of stations by 4, we could produce 96 megawatts of electricity using geothermal. Probably enough for the Isle of Man's demands, total demands, that is. There's plenty of land available to build 4 stations, which could, once the drilling rig has gone, only have wellheads just 2 meters tall, 6 foot. And the buildings to house the turbines and ancillary equipment, low relief and certainly nowhere near as obtrusive as wind turbines. And it could be that the wells will be more productive than United Downs, which would reduce the numbers needed and possibly the number of stations needed. Now, Graham and Fred reckon that we could get as much electricity as the Isle of Man needs just by doing this. Since such a project will be classed as strategic infrastructure, funding would have to be done by the government and the MUA. The stations would be run by the MUA. You wouldn't want a private company running another monopoly. Fred Gray and Graham Fox-Hume know of which they speak. Backgrounds in petrochemicals, geology and geophysics. And yet, at the moment, the government doesn't seem to want to talk about geothermal, put test bores down. Fact is, we could always find out if it would work or not. And if it didn't work, well, what's it going to have cost us? I mean, I think it was Clive Collis who said about $1 million or so. Think it's worth it? That's it. Have a great weekend. We're back with an open line on Monday. Thanks to Howie on the phones today.
WIN